I still remember the exact moment a stylist looked at my photo and said nothing, just paused a beat too long. That pause told me more than words could. If you've ever caught your reflection in a shop window and felt a flicker of, "Who is that?" Today's video is going to feel like someone finally handed you the manual nobody gave us. We're covering 5 hairstyles that quietly add years to your face, styles that were flattering once, maybe even your signature look for decades, and exactly what to replace each one with so the mirror starts working for you again instead of against you. I researched the worst style and beauty mistakes and the best fixes for women over 50, so you get real results fast. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. I cover this every week. Part 1. The rounded bob that's rounding out your face. Here's something almost nobody explains to you when you first fall in love with the classic rounded bob. The exact same haircut that looked crisp and polished at 45 starts working against your bone structure the moment your face begins to soften with age. It's not the color. It's not even really the length. It's the shape of the ends. That solid, blunt, all one-length rounded edge that used to define your jawline now just echoes it, and doubles it, and makes your whole lower face read wider and heavier than it actually is. I know how that sounds, and I promise this isn't about anything being wrong with your face. It's about the haircut not evolving alongside it. Rosalind, one of the women I hear from often, told me she'd worn the same rounded bob since her 30s because it was easy, and always worked. When she finally sent me a photo, I could see immediately what decades of comfort had hidden from her. The round, heavy line at the bottom was pulling every bit of attention down and out, right when her face needed lift and movement instead. The fix is a soft, graduated shag layered through the ends, with the heaviest weight removed right at the point where the bob currently sits heaviest, usually an inch or two above the jaw. Ask your stylist specifically for point cutting through the perimeter to break up the blunt line, with face framing layers starting at the cheekbone. That phrasing matters. A generic "add some layers" request often gets you thinned out ends that still hang in the same heavy shape. Point cutting actually changes the silhouette, not just the density. What happens next is almost immediate. Once that blunt line is broken, the eye stops tracing a solid horizontal edge across your jaw and instead follows soft, uneven pieces that move independently. That movement is what reads as youthful. Not the absence of gray, not smoother skin, just hair that behaves like it has life in it rather than sitting like a helmet. Diane, another woman in this community, texted me 2 days after her cut saying a coworker asked if she'd done something different, without being able to name what. That's the tell. Nobody clocks a haircut change consciously nearly as often as they clock the feeling that you suddenly look more awake. There's a second layer to why this works, and it's one most articles skip entirely. As we age, our hair naturally loses density at the crown and gains a slightly coarser, sometimes wavier texture lower down. A blunt bob assumes uniform density from root to end, which is exactly the assumption that stopped being true for most of us sometime in our 50s. Layering doesn't just change the shape, it redistributes visual weight to match how your hair actually grows now, so the style stops fighting your real texture and starts working with it. That's the difference between a haircut that looks done and one that looks effortless. The transition doesn't require going short, either. If you love your length, keep it. This fix is about breaking the line, not shortening it. A graduated shag can be shoulder length or even longer, as long as the layering starts high enough to interrupt that heavy bottom edge. Bring a photo of movement-focused layering, not just a length reference, so your stylist understands you want the internal structure to change, not just a trim. Before, a solid rounded chin-length bob with one heavy blunt line at the bottom, reading dense and static. After, the same length loosely layered into a soft shag, ends broken up and moving independently, reading light and alive. And that heaviness at the bottom of a bob? It's actually one of the milder offenders on this list. The next style we're covering does something even sneakier. It doesn't just weigh your face down. It actively erases the one feature that keeps a face looking sharp and defined as we get older. Part 2. The flat, overgrown fringe swallowing your eyes. Nobody warns you about this one because it happens so gradually you don't notice it's happening. A fringe that started out light and swept slowly grows heavier over months of, "I'll get it trimmed next time," until one day it's sitting flat against your brow line, blocking the upper part of your eyes completely. And that single change does more damage to how old you look than almost anything else on this list, because your eyes are the first thing anyone actually looks at. Here's the mechanism nobody explains. A heavy, flat fringe cuts a hard horizontal line directly across your forehead. And that line does two things at once. It shortens your face vertically, which reads as compressed and tired rather than open. And it shadows your eyes, which reads as guarded even when you're not feeling that way at all. Marguerite told me she'd been wearing the same thick, straight-across fringe for so long she genuinely forgot she had a choice. Until a photo from her granddaughter's graduation showed her squinting slightly under it. And she realized the fringe wasn't framing her face anymore, it was hiding it. The fix is a soft side-swept curtain fringe, parted just off-center and feathered so the pieces fall past the temples rather than straight down over the brow. Ask your stylist for a curtain fringe, razor cut at the ends, parted slightly off-center, with the longest pieces landing at the outer corner of the eye. There's a texture consideration here too, and it's one that trips people up when they try to explain this fringe to a new stylist over the phone. A curtain fringe needs to be razor cut, not scissor cut straight across, because a razor edge naturally splits into soft pieces as it dries, while a blunt scissor edge tends to dry as one solid clump that fights the side-swept direction you're going for. If your fringe keeps falling flat no matter how you style it, this is very often the actual reason. Not your hair, the cutting technique. For at-home maintenance between salon visits, the trick is drying the fringe pieces with a round brush, pulling them diagonally away from the center part, rather than straight down. This trains the fringe to keep falling open around the eyes instead of collapsing back to center. It takes about 90 seconds longer than drying it flat, and it's the difference between the fringe looking intentional every day and looking intentional only right after a salon visit. Before, a heavy blunt, straight-across fringe sitting low and flat, shadowing both eyes. After, a soft razor-cut curtain fringe swept to the sides, both eyes and brows fully open and visible. Now here's a secret most stylists won't volunteer unless you ask directly. The third style on this list isn't even about cut or fringe at all. It's about something happening at your roots that most women mistake for a color problem, when it's actually much simpler to fix than that. Part 3. The flat root crown nobody told you about. This is the one that surprises people most, because it isn't really about a haircut at all. It's about what's happening, or not happening, at the very top of your head. If your hair lies completely flat against your scalp at the crown, that flatness alone can add years to your appearance faster than almost any other single factor. And most women blame it on thinning hair when the real cause is often just how the hair is being dried and styled. Here's why this happens the way it does. As estrogen levels shift with age, hair strands genuinely do get finer in diameter for a lot of women, which makes it harder for hair to hold itself upright at the root the way it once did naturally. But here's the part that gets missed. Even genuinely fine hair can hold significant root lift with the right drying technique. What's actually flattening most women's crowns isn't thinning alone. It's drying hair by pointing the blow dryer straight down from above, which pushes every strand flat against the scalp exactly where you need the opposite. Diane again. She'd assumed for years her flat crown meant she was just going bald up there, and was genuinely stunned to learn it was a drying habit, not a density problem. The fix has two parts and both matter. First, ask your stylist for a root-lifting cut with graduated layers concentrated specifically at the crown, not throughout the whole head. This is different from all-over layering, because it puts the shortest, most texturized pieces exactly where lift is needed most, rather than diffusing the effect evenly across hair that doesn't need it. Second, and this is the part you control every single day at home, dry your roots by bending forward at the waist and directing the dryer up and against the direction of hair growth, at the roots only, for the first 2 minutes. Only once the roots are set do you flip back upright, and finish the rest of the length. The result statement here is one of the clearest on this entire list. Root lift at the crown doesn't just add height. It changes the entire proportion of your face from any angle, including the angles you can't control, like someone standing slightly above you or catching you from the side in a photo. Rosalind told me that after she started this 2-minute habit, her daughter-in-law asked what different shampoo she was using, assuming the change was about volume products rather than technique. It wasn't the products. It was 2 minutes of drying direction, done consistently. If you color treat your hair, There's an additional consideration worth knowing. Buildup from styling products, especially heavier creams and serums, settles fastest at the root, because that's where product is usually applied first and worked in most. That buildup adds weight. And weight is the enemy of lift no matter how good your drying technique is. A clarifying shampoo used once every 1 to 2 weeks, followed immediately by a lightweight root lift mousse applied only to the first inch of hair at the scalp, keeps that area light enough to actually respond to the upward drying direction instead of sitting there under a layer of product residue. One more detail that changes everything and costs nothing. The direction of your part matters more than most women realize. A perfectly centered part creates 2 equal, heavy sections that both want to fall flat toward the face. A part positioned slightly off-center, roughly a third of the way across rather than dead center, naturally creates a small zone of imbalance at the root that catches air and product differently, making lift easier to build and easier to maintain through the day. Before, hair lying completely flat against the scalp at the crown, styled with a centered part, reading dense but lifeless. After, visible root lift concentrated at the crown, off-center part, reading open and lifted from every angle. I'll admit something here. This next one took me the longest to accept myself, because it involves a color choice that feels safe and low maintenance, right up until you realize it's doing the opposite of what you think. Part 4. The solid, flat color draining your face. This is the mistake that hides in plain sight because it looks tidy, uniform, and well-maintained, which is exactly why it's so easy to fall into and so hard to recognize on yourself. A single, flat, all-over color, whether it's a solid dyed shade or fully gray with no variation, removes something your hair used to do automatically when it was naturally multitonal. It stops reflecting light in different directions across different sections. And that lack of light movement is what makes a face look duller and flatter than it actually is. Think about how natural, untouched hair actually looks in youth. It's rarely one single shade. It's dozens of subtly different tones layered together, catching light differently depending on the angle. When we color hair one flat shade to cover gray, or when gray comes in uniformly across the whole head, that natural tonal variation disappears. And with it goes a subtle but real light-reflecting quality around the face that used to soften and brighten your complexion without you doing anything at all. Colette described her solid dark brown color as looking like a wig in certain lighting, even though it was completely natural, because flat color reads as artificial regardless of whether it's dyed or not. Once all tonal variation is gone, the fix is low lights and highlights woven specifically to mimic how hair naturally varies in tone. Not an all-over color change, but dimension added within the color you already have. Ask your stylist for face framing balayage with 2 to 3 tonal variations, placed to catch light at the crown and around the hairline specifically. If you're fully gray and want to stay that way, the same principle applies through a technique called gray blending, where subtle lowlights are woven through in tones 1 or 2 shades deeper than your natural gray, creating that same light-catching variation without changing your overall gray palette at all. The transition in how this reads happens almost instantly, and it happens in every kind of lighting, which is part of what makes it such a reliable fix. Under bright daylight, the different tones catch and release light as you move, creating a soft shimmer effect around your face that flat color simply cannot produce. Under warmer indoor lighting, the same variation reads as richness and depth rather than the slightly flat, matte quality solid color often takes on indoors. Marguerite went from a single flat gray to a blended, multitonal gray, and told me the compliment she now hears most often isn't about her hair at all. It's people telling her she looks well, which is exactly the kind of vague but real read that tonal variation produces, because it's brightening her whole complexion, not just decorating her hair. There's a maintenance advantage here too, that often gets overlooked in the decision to switch. Flat, solid color shows regrowth starkly, because there's a hard visible line where the color stops and your natural root begins. Woven multitonal color has no such hard line. The variation already built into the color disguises new growth for significantly longer, which for most women means stretching salon visits from every 4 weeks to closer to every 8 to 10 weeks without the regrowth ever looking obvious. That's not just a cosmetic upgrade, it's meaningfully less time and cost over the course of a year. One important note if you're considering this change: ask specifically for tones that stay within 2 shades of your current base color, whether that's your natural gray or a dyed shade. Going too far outside that range in either direction, lighter or darker, can look like an obvious color job rather than natural variation, which defeats the entire purpose of the technique. Subtlety is what makes this work. The goal is for people to notice you look better without being able to say exactly what changed. Before, one completely flat, uniform hair color with no tonal variation, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. After, soft, woven lowlights and highlights creating natural-looking tonal variation that catches and reflects light around the face. There's one hairstyle left on this list, and it's the one I get asked about more than any other, because it's the style so many of us were told, for years, was the safe choice for getting older. It's the opposite of safe. Part 5. The overly short, uniform pixie playing it too safe. This is the one that surprises people the most, because for decades the advice handed to women going gray or entering their 60s was some version of just go short, it's easier. And a short pixie can absolutely look wonderful. But a specific version of it, the uniform, tightly clipped, all one-length pixie with no texture variation anywhere, does the opposite of what it promises. Instead of looking neat and modern, it can read as severe, and severity at the hairline tends to harden every feature around it rather than softening any of them. The mechanism here is about proportion again, the same underlying principle running through this whole list. A uniform short pixie removes almost all length-based softness near the face at exactly the stage of life when skin is naturally losing some of its own elasticity and softness. Hair used to compensate for that automatically, just by having some length and movement near the jaw and cheek. Cut that away entirely and evenly, with no textural variation to replace it, and there's nothing left to soften the transition between hairline and face. Every angle and edge of the haircut becomes an angle and edge of your face too. Rosalind, back for a third mention because she really has been on quite a journey through this list, had worn a uniform pixie for almost 15 years because a stylist told her once, decades ago, that it would be easy forever. It had become a kind of hairstyle autopilot rather than an active choice. The fix isn't necessarily growing it out. Plenty of women genuinely love short hair and should absolutely keep it. The fix is texture. Ask your stylist for a textured pixie with longer, softer pieces left at the crown and around the face, point cut rather than clipped uniformly, with the sides kept shorter for contrast. That contrast between length at the top and shorter sides is what reintroduces movement and softness without sacrificing the low-maintenance appeal that likely drew you to short hair in the first place. The crown pieces, specifically, are what create that face-softening effect the uniform version was missing entirely. Here's the result statement, and it's a strong one. Once texture and length variation are introduced at the crown and around the face, the pixie stops reading as a single, static shape and starts reading as styled, deliberate hair. The difference between a haircut that looks like it happened to you and one that looks like you chose it. When Rosalind finally had the texture added, she told me the change felt less like getting a new haircut, and more like getting her personality back into her hair, because suddenly there was something to actually style each morning rather than just maintaining a shape. There's a styling technique worth mentioning here too, because texture in a pixie only shows up properly if it's dried correctly. Air drying a textured pixie tends to let the crown pieces fall flat, which erases the very texture that was just cut in. A light matte paste or texturizing cream, worked through damp hair at the crown with fingertips rather than a comb, and then air-dried or gently diffused, lets those longer pieces separate and hold their own shape instead of collapsing into a flat cap. This takes under a minute once you've done it a few times, and it's the single biggest factor in whether a textured pixie looks intentional or accidental on any given day. It's worth saying plainly, there's nothing inherently aging about short hair. The 5 styles in this video were never really about length, color, or even specific cuts in isolation. They were about uniformity versus movement, flatness versus dimension, and heaviness versus lightness. Every single fix followed that same underlying pattern. Whether we were talking about a bob, a fringe, root volume, color, or a pixie. Once you start seeing hair through that lens, you'll never look at a style the same way again, and you'll know exactly what question to ask a new stylist even if you can't remember every technical term from this video. Before, a uniformly short, tightly clipped pixie with no textural variation, reading severe and static. After, A textured pixie with longer soft pieces at the crown and around the face, reading soft, styled, and deliberate. 5 styles, 5 fixes, and 1 thread running through every single one of them. The goal was never to look younger for its own sake, it was to let your hair actually work with your face again instead of quietly working against it. You now know exactly what to say to a stylist for 5 different fixes. Point cutting a heavy bob, a razor-cut curtain fringe, crown concentrated root lift, woven tonal color, and a textured pixie, and every single one of them comes down to the same idea. Movement over flatness every time. That's not a small thing to walk away with. That's a whole new way of evaluating any hairstyle you're ever handed a photo of again. Out of these 5, which one hit closest to home for you? Was it the bob, the fringe, the flat crown, the color, or the pixie?